Okay, thanks for joining again today. And I think today we're going to talk about goals and the role they can play, the value in setting goals, the risk in setting or sharing goals, all things goals. So I'm excited to dive into this. I think this is something that is maybe some misunderstandings around and high intentions when we think through New Year's resolutions and stuff, but actually very little thought on the role of goal plays and actually how to properly set them and execute on them. So excited to dive in.
Yep, I think you nailed it right there. A lot of people set goals and have good intentions coming into it, but if you don't do it the right way, you're probably not going to take much action, or there's not going to be a lot of those goals achieved.
Let's set the stage here. So just to walk through how we view the role that goals play, and again, it fits in this flow chart, order of operations, and how I believe things should go through. So that flow chart starts off with values. So we call it values. It could be theme or underlying motive. So we'll call it values for this purpose. So values and then goals. Okay. So values is like really the underlying theme behind what you're trying to achieve and really what is important to you. The goals are more of the actual, like more tangible, action oriented things that are influenced by those values. So values, then goals. Once we understand the what's important to you and the associated goals, then we can start assessing the decisions. So the trade-offs you're going to have to make, the opportunity costs, and so on. And then finally, after values, goals, decisions, we can finally start taking action. And again, just in my observation, I don't have any studies on this. I'm sure you can go find some real quick. But my observations, most people unfortunately live in this reactionary state that seems like it's pretty much just taking action, which of course no one actually just purely acts per se. There's some level of decision making, be it split second or a few days or a few weeks. But most people live in this reactionary state of decision action. Some people stop and set goals routinely, be it on New Year's or every few years because you forget, or some people write down their goals weekly or even daily. But even then, I would say very few people stop to ask, why do I have these goals? What are they related to? Is this goal actually important to me? Yeah, and that's where I like to go today. I know it's probably 10, 15 years ago. I had a goal of one day owning a private airplane in a hangar. And I was talking to a friend about it, and he challenged me. It was like he just pushed back and said, "Well, man, that's really expensive and has a lot of upkeep and associated costs that might not be necessary, especially how often you plan on using it." And what he pointed out was there's a lot of services out there that achieve the same things that I was trying to get out of a private airplane, which made me realize in that moment my goal, and I don't even have this goal anymore. My goal at that point was not to own a private airplane. The thing I was after was ease of travel. That's what I wanted. And I just assumed the thing I wanted was a private airplane. What I wanted, so more the value side of things would be ease of travel, but I skipped past asking the question. So I went to I want an airplane, which could lead to not assessing the decisions and trade-offs properly and thus taking huge actions that were not even aligned with what I wanted. So again, asking why do you have that goal? What is the purpose of it? Is that the best thing that you can do for the thing you're actually trying to achieve? I think is super important.
Yeah, and where should your focus really be? I was listening to a TED talk this morning. A guy, Chuck Walkendorfer. I don't think I'm butchering that last name, and I don't think Chuck will listen to this. But if he does, and I butchered that, I'm sorry. But he was talking about I don't know where he got his stats from either. So this could be made up on the spot. But he said 70% of people set goals and only about 8% of people achieve them. And what he attributes that to is that most people just focus on the goal and spend too much time thinking about, like, man, I want that airplane. And so they just start doing stuff, and they don't spend enough time uh, really planning out the actions that they have to take in like an achievable way to actually get to that goal. They're so focused on that future thing that they want and they don't spend enough time now. Like the example he gave was, if your goal is to bake a cake, but you don't spend any time studying or finding a recipe, you just hop in the kitchen and start going. Like if you've made a bunch of cakes, maybe that'll work. But if you're like me and I didn't take the time to understand the actions that needed to be taken in the correct order to uh, have the outcome of an edible cake, then that would just be a disaster.
Yeah, so I guess the question there would be like what is the role of a goal and how should having a goal impact your actions? Is it enough just to set goals? Again, if it's well, I'm going to bake a cake. Okay, that's great. I would say that's an intention, but you could have great intentions and have poor execution all day. So in things that I've observed, a lot of people, I guess according to that statistic, most people statistically do set goals, but I think a lot of people don't set goals for a couple of reasons. One, they never stop to think through really what's important to them. And I would argue, I guess, that even a lot of people who get statistically, it seems that the majority of people do set goals, according to that dude on the TED Talk. So according to him, 70%, I think the number he said was 70% of people do set goals. So the majority of people do set goals. Okay. But I would guess that the majority of those goals are not actually rooted in something of deep and purposeful meaning. So they're not asking themselves, why do I have that goal? Okay. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm pointing fingers and I should just point that finger back at me and say, no, Jim, you're the only person who's ever done that. Maybe. I think a lot of people don't set goals, and I think that's because of a couple reasons. Again, they just don't take the time to. But I think I have seen a lot of people who they have set goals or New Year's resolutions so many times that they never achieve. So eventually, like, you know what? What's the point? Why would I even do that? So they're done with setting goals. Like I'll just do, you know, que sera sera. They'll just do whatever, and they'll figure it out as they go. And I think it's important. We purposely don't lead our conversations when someone comes and sits down with us. We do not lead with, well, tell me, what are your goals? What are your life goals, your money goals, your investment goals? We don't start there because I think we're apt to put people in an odd spot. One, they'll freeze up and I don't know. Or a lot of times they're spouting off things that they'll regurgitate goal ideas they've heard from other people. Well, I guess I want to retire when I'm 65 because that's, I guess, when you're allowed to retire. It'd be neat to have a vacation house and maybe travel to Europe twice a year or whatever those goals are. But usually what I found again is, okay, well, why is that important to you? Like, I don't know. I think that's when you can retire. Or I don't know. A lot of people said that I should do this. So again, asking why do you have that goal, I think is a silly question. Or leading off with what are your goals, I think can be silly. And that's why we anchor in first to going these deeper questions to explore really their value system. Once we've dug enough deeply there, then we will ask directly, okay, so tell me, like, what's important to you? What are things you want to have or do or achieve? We could call those goals, but we only go there once we have deeply established the value side of things. And now the values are top of mind and deep seated, where it's more apt that your goals that you're going to start listing off are rooted in the values that we just went through. Um, yeah, I think a lot of people are afraid to maybe voice those goals for, I don't know, I haven't followed through in the past, so therefore I'm done with it, or I don't know what's important to me, but here's a few vague goals because I guess we're supposed to set these. That's what adults do is they set goals and they follow through on it. I don't know if you would you agree or have you what do you think about that?
Yeah, I literally wrote down while you started talking about that to bring up the point that yes, I think people that don't set goals have probably tried setting goals in the past. They went about it the wrong way and failed, so now they view goal setting as I'm setting myself up for failure, so I'm just not going to do this. Um, so yeah, I think you nailed it there. And then to your point about uh, starting with values, obviously goals are going to change. You know, the goals you had 5 years ago are different than today, and 5 years from now, they're going to be different again. But if you take the time to start by anchoring into the value, it makes that, transition from one goal to another much easier because you actually know what's informing these goals to begin with.
Yeah, you just said something that you and I have said hundreds, if not thousands, of times when we're trying to disarm people. Like we go through this values exercise and we come out with this, you know, guns ablaze, tell me your goals question, and that can be like, dude, why is this so direct after going through these other questions that were more just like open ended. And I try to lead with that, like, hey, like tell me about your goals. What are things you want to do, have, achieve, become? What's important to you? It can be financial or non-financial. And I also disclose, like, hey, I understand that, like, your goals that you have today are probably way different than your goals that you had 10 years ago. And I'd venture to say that 10 years from now, your goals will be different than they are today. And that's totally fine. It's because I think the purpose of goals is to inform the best next step. The role of a goal is not just to be this anchor that all of a sudden you have to drive towards, because maybe you get more information. Maybe you get more information on what you thought you wanted. Maybe your life changes. Maybe a different opportunity presents itself that's better, or something else that's just necessary. It'd be silly to continue pursuing that goal simply because you wrote it down in your journal in 2016 that you're going to do it by 2026. So the role of that goal that you establish is to inform, okay, this is where I want to go. What actions do I need to begin taking? So again, that goes back to one, does that goal, and this is why we have that framework, is values being the theme. We want to make sure your values inform your goals. And if your goals shift, but ultimately you've been pursuing a goal that is informed by your values, the theme of what we're trying to achieve, even as that goal shifts, you're still ultimately pursuing the same directionally accurate spot. So the goal is going to shift, and that's okay. You're right. You're running the same direction. So values, goals, and then decisions. If we've done the hard work of establishing these goals, but then recognizing that maybe a goal has shifted or circumstances have shifted, that's okay. We're not here anchored into this thing that's unnecessarily. We don't want to put unnecessary emphasis on a thing, that thing being a goal. Again, it's establishing what's the best next step. So when you first establish that goal, it says, okay, what are the decisions I need to make? If I'm going to pursue X, that means I cannot pursue Y, or at least I cannot pursue Y as intensely or devotedly. Okay. So I can't be as devoted to this other thing because I must go this direction. So now I'm starting to understand the decisions. And then finally, once I have assessed the decisions and the trade-offs and opportunity costs, other things are going to come up. But we're trying to think through, like, what's the most apt things that will come up and how will I navigate that? Is it worth giving this up? Finally, you can take action with conviction, and you're able to do so with clarity, conviction, and momentum, because you've already thought through, okay, this is important to me. Here's why it's important to me. Here's what I'm willing to trade to achieve X. Now I can just run and be more devoted towards that thing. Again, understanding that that goal itself will probably change, but that's okay, because ultimately it's informed by the thematically what you said's important to you. That was a rant. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. It was all good stuff. I think one thing you said or mentioned was goals being an informer of like the next best action, the next best thing to begin working on. And that reminds me of you put me on a book about, I don't know, a year or so ago called The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan.
Papasan, yeah.
Uh, Papasan, yeah. So the question they pose over and over in that book is, what is the one thing that I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? So again, just leading to that whole idea that the goal here is to decide what is the next best action to take.
Yeah. And that's, again, as you're doing that, you're assessing, okay, if I'm going to do this, that will come at the expense of these other things. Is
Mhm.
it that important to me? And again, I think that's a unfortunate collateral damage that happens as people take action without considering the implications of their actions. And that can come because, well, I've always wanted to have this. So they have this arbitrary goal in their head. Thus, they take action going for it without considering the implications of that. Well, I've always wanted to have a supercar, And because of that, I need to work Saturdays, 3 Saturdays a month, so I can sell more things, so I can afford this supercar, because that is a goal. Without understanding that if you pursue this, you're giving up time on Saturdays when your kids have their soccer game. So thus, I'm saying with my time that and money that the supercar is more important than time with kids. And I'm not saying supercars are evil, but these are the decisions you have to make. When you choose something, you are directly or indirectly giving up something else. There's opportunity cost with everything. So again, we want to make sure that your goals are informed by really what's important to you. And that's where, again, this theme of maybe I've had a lot of really honoring conversations with clients over the years. And like something we do with when we first start working with an individual or family is we'll go through these questions to understand like really what is important to them. Again, like the values theme side of thing. And we'll talk about goals, and we'll talk through the decisions and implications. Then we'll go through like, okay, what actions do we need to start taking? And then we'll start aligning their resources, their investments and assets and businesses and things like that with what they described. And then we come back and we ask them to create what we call a statement of financial purpose. And this statement of financial purpose is meant to be sort of a mission statement or a summary of that value conversation. So there's a family, this is probably 5 years ago, we had them create their statement of financial purpose. And they said ultimately that they wanted financial independence so they could spend more time making memories as a family. And they had some goals that were associated with that. And goals being like, oh, it'd be nice to be able to retire at an early age. It was like late 40s. And we'd like to have a house in the woods and have these things. But those were primarily to serve the role of having more time as a family. Well, probably 2 years after working with this family, I get a call on like a Tuesday night and said, hey, Jim, a house just came for sale down the road. They don't really come up too often. We're thinking about buying it. Should we? And immediately, like being someone who's moved a lot, I hate moving. I was curious, why would you choose to move all of your stuff just so you can go a few houses down the road? He said, well, there's the house down the street has a pool, and this family live in Houston, Texas, and it's hot and humid there 11 and a half months of the year. He said, well, this house down the street has a pool and our current house doesn't. And they have two girls. They're, I believe, about 11 and 13 at the time. They said anytime the girls hang out with friends, they go to their friends' houses because all their friends have swimming pools. And I think if we got this new house, then hangouts would happen at our house more. I said, okay, give me 5 minutes. Let me call you right back. So in that 5 minutes, I did a couple things. One, I just looked at, roughly ran the numbers and, the quantifiable side of things that most people think that their financial planner would do. I called him back and I said, hey, look, if we're talking numbers, here's the implications and trade-offs, and here's why you can do it. Here's the impacts it would have. They're relatively minimal, and I gave them the thumbs up there. But then I read back to them their statement of financial purpose that they had given me years back. I said, hey, you told me when we first started working together that ultimately the mission statement for your money is so you can create moments and memories together as a family. I said, hey, your girls, you've got 5 and 7 years left before they're off to school and out of your house forever. Like, yeah, if you get this house with a pool, it's going to cost you a little bit more. And it might, instead of retiring at 48, you'll retire at 49 or whatever. It's going to cost you a little bit more. But the role here, from your words, not mine, is for time as a family. Yeah, you should go do that. Like, yeah, go buy that new house. And again, that comes back to is the goal was never directly a pool. The pool was there to serve a role, and that role was gathering for family. And the goal was associated with that, a place of making memories. It's the tangible thing associated with it. And we get to argue that's retirement. There's a lot of people who retire at 40 or 70 because they think they need to retire, and that's a goal. But in reality, they're stepping away from something rather than saying, hey, I would like to have more time to spend with the people I love or pursue passions or do things that are important to me or be able to serve more. And thinking through, why do you want to retire? Why do you want these things? I think is super important. I've seen that a lot with people who are in this FIRE movement. So financial independence, retire early. It's this big movement of people who ultimately usually want to have early retirement, usually in their 30s or so, and they want to be done working at 30. And what I fear is a lot of these people will work a job they hate and a lot of hours and stiff arm community and other things that are important to them so they can retire at 35. And they're going to hit their goal and they're going to go backpack in Bali. And after 3 weeks, they're going to realize that they're pretty empty and they don't have much purpose or value or relationships because they just stiff armed all those things for the last 10 years. And yeah, now they can, they're retired and all their friends are working and they don't have people to share this stuff with. It's silly. And maybe I'm not saying early retirement's bad, but like, why? Why do you want this? What role can this play? And what's the theme behind it that's ultimately there? So I know I'm harping this. We're not even talking about goals. We're talking about the theme and the values behind the goals. But you have to be anchored in that before a goal can come up and actually be really valuable. And I would argue that a goal is only going to be pursued well for most people if it is actually anchored in a value, because then you actually see like there's meaning behind it versus I'm just pursuing this goofy thing. I don't want to wake up at 4 a.m. to go to the gym every day so I can lose weight. Is losing weight the goal? Well, yeah. But ultimately, what you're trying to pursue is having better health so you can spend more time with your family. You can be with your kids longer. You can go hiking and backpacking or play sports with your kids into your older age. So like it's man, I want to be able to make memories with my family. Thus I need better health. Thus I should lose weight, whatever. So the associated goal needs to be associated with something that's important to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, again, harping on the importance of anchoring into a value is if, you're setting arbitrary goals that aren't anchored into something that actually is important to you, you're number one, you're probably not going to achieve that goal because it's not anchored into a value. And number two, you're probably in the while you're um, trying to achieve this goal, you're going to end up wasting a lot of time and resources and energy again because you didn't take that time to make sure that hey, this thing I'm pursuing is actually important to me. For you didn't peel back the layers on why I'm actually doing this in the first place.
Yeah. You have a few interesting things that are associated with goals. So this is an obvious thing like with financial planning, retirement planning is a lot of people have trouble saving for retirement. And there's a study that was done a few years ago as to show like why do people have trouble people have trouble with retirement saving and those sorts of things. Well, there was a study that was done where these people essentially hooked up these nodes on your brain that would be able to read like, okay, how's this person reacting? How's their brain firing based off of what we're to describe? So what this study did is they presented different scenarios to people, and they said, all right, imagine yourself after this good thing happens to you, and they would tell a story associated with that, and part of their brain would fire, and it was this part of like, oh, that's me, and then they would tell a story of okay, after this happens to a stranger, and a different part of your story of your brain would fire. And then they would tell a story of, hey, this happens to you, but it's 30 years out and your brain would fire. But the part of your brain that would fire in that circumstance was not the you brain. It was a part of your brain that fired when it was a story about a stranger. So a lot of times, just like how we think, I don't know the science on this, but generally speaking, how we think, if it's a distant self, we're associating our distant self as a stranger, not us. So even then, like having long-term deep-seated goals for us in the long term can be tough because it seems like we're setting goals for this it's for someone that's not even us.
Yeah, I think that's where it comes in, like how you approach achieving that goal. If you have a goal that's whatever 5 years down the road that I want to accomplish this thing, like back into what actions do I need to take so that you can change that 5 year goal into a next week goal. Like, okay, I want to achieve this thing in 5 years. That's a long ways away. Maybe I'm viewing that goal as I'm a stranger. But to make it more impactful, it's like, okay, here's my 5 year goal. What do I need to do by 3 years? What do I need to do by 1 year? What do I need to do by 6 months? What do I need to do by 1 month? Or what should I do by next week? And now I feel like all of a sudden you've turned that stranger into someone that is actually you because you've determined what I need to do next week to begin this process of getting to that 5 year goal.
You I know the whole like SMART goals. I'm sure you've heard of SMART goals. That's sort of a cliche thing, but I guess I mean that it's a good acronym. It's a good use tool
Mhm.
for talking about goals. So for those who aren't familiar with it, SMART goals being specific, measurable, achievable, and relevant, and then time bound. So what you just described is like, all right, it can't just be like, I want to retire when I'm old. It's like, all right, what is old to you? When you're
Yeah.
6 years old, old is like 12. So like, what is old? So it needs to be time bound. I want to have X by this age. It needs to be specific. Like, what does retire mean? Measurable. Okay, how am I achieving that? And that's where you mentioned a second ago is like, well, instead of just having this goal that's decades out, how do I have benchmarks and tangible things that I can be doing between now and then that I can check in my progress that associates with actions versus like, yeah,
Mhm.
maybe my goal is retire 30 years out, and between now and years 1 through 25 I do nothing, and then I think I can just hustle in 26 through 30, versus having these benchmarks along the way and the appropriate actions to take between now and then. So yeah, and it obviously needs to be achievable, and we can talk in a few minutes about having like the different types of goals, like regular goals versus like stretch goals. I think those can be important. We can talk about that as well. And obviously, I think the last one is so relevant. I went way out of order there, but having relevant goals, like make sure it actually applies to you and is valuable to you.
Yeah.
I guess when it comes to goals themselves, I wrote down a few interesting statistics. So I found that it said somewhere I read it was a study. It said that 42% more likely to achieve a goal if you had written that goal down. And then you're 64% more likely to achieve a goal if you share that goal with somebody else. Not if you have the same goal, but if you share it with another person. So 42% just by writing it down, 64% more likely if you share it with somebody. So something that Kendra and I do. So Kendra, she's my wife. Something Kendra and I do is my parents gave us a really cool gift for our wedding, and it's a wood box that's engraved with our names on it and some stuff, and it takes two keys to open this box. And we each year at around New Year's we sit down and we open up the box together and we spend time going through it. And in that box, we have a few different note cards, and we use the note cards for different purposes. So we have one set of note cards that we write down our favorite memories and things we're thankful for the year that just wrapped up. And then we have another set of note cards that are our goals and prayers for the upcoming year. So what we do when we open up our box each year, and it's always fun, is we go back and we read the things that we were thankful for the year prior. So like we're about to be in 2026. So what we'll do is we'll go back through and we'll read the things that we wrote that we were thankful for in 2024. Okay. So now it's like reminiscing, like, oh wow. And we're recalling
Yeah.
things that we should be grateful for. So we don't forget. It's recalling things in our life that we're grateful for. And so that itself is nice. And then we review the goals that we set for the year that just wrapped up, and we say like, how did we do? We check off, or we give ourselves notes and everything in that. And then what we'll do is we'll write down what we're grateful for the year that just wrapped up. So we'll go through like, man, we got to go on this cool trip, we got to do these things, and like whatever, our kids were healthy, new baby came, found out we're pregnant, whatever, these things. And then finally, again, we'll set goals for the upcoming year, goals and things we're praying for and we'd like to have achieved. So we'll do that. And so she and I do that together. And we try to make these, again, we try to set them as like SMART goals. And usually they're going to be into 1 year related. And then I personally set goals for our business. And the business goals, I break down a little bit more specific. And those I actually give myself, I gave you, as I mentioned a minute ago, like different types of goals. So for the business, I set goals on an annual basis. And those goals I will break down. I'll have a base goal. So the base goal is like, it's good if we hit this. This is what we want to hit. And then I'll set a great goal that's like, hey, things went really well. And then I'll set a stretch goal. Like if everything goes through phenomenally and perfectly, we would do X. So I'll set those goals. So that's how I do that. And beyond that, like I have goals for our business. I started this company in 2021, and I had particular goals to have achieved by the year of 2035. And then that informed, okay, well, the long term goal here is 2035. And if I'm going to get there eventually, what do I need to do in the year of 2021? And then, so I set those like small goals, like on a monthly basis, an annual basis. And then what do I need to do in the next 3 years? And then eventually it gets sort of silly. If I'm trying to do a business plan for between now and 15 years out, I can't say like, all right, at year 9 and 6 months, I should do this. So what I did was long-term goals, and then 1, 2, 3, and then I start getting more of like thematically what direction do I need to go. If you're even thinking about money, how much money should you have at a certain point? You're going to reach this place of like compounding and so on that's hard to scale, but you should at least have a direction of that you want to keep going, or do you want to head. So that's how Kendra and I handle our goals. Again, both on a personal marital side of things, and also personal, and then also on the business front. I don't know.
Yeah,
Do you and or Bethany set goals?
we do. It's not quite as formal and it doesn't sound as fun as what y'all do. We're going to have to implement some of that. But yeah, ours is just we have a shared note on our phones that we talk through. We set goals, we check in on them. Not even like we don't have necessarily a regular cadence that we check in on those goals, but that is what we use to keep track of the things that we're both, trying to achieve individually and together as a family. I like the reminiscing thing though. You hear about that a lot. Like, if you stop and think about how many things you have today that you were probably praying for 5 years ago or 3 years ago or whatever. So I think it's really important to take the time and have gratitude for where you're at. And it's important. Like, we've had these podcasts about communication and marriage and all these things. And this definitely, I think, having healthy conversations around values, individually and again as a family, and then talking through, checking in on them, encouraging each other. That is just one piece of this whole idea of having healthy communication around all these things.
Yeah, no, I think it's a cool idea for the shared note. That way you can check in. That's something Kendra and I realized early on in marriage was we would set these goals, and then like the next year we'd check. It was like, oh, I totally forgot that was a goal I had. So now what we do each year before we lock them away in our box, we take pictures on our phone. I reference mine routinely. It's like, okay, I said this is important to me. I said I want to read X many books this year. I want to work out so many times and so on. So am I doing that right now? That way I don't get to the year and think, oh man, I forgot after February. So trying to bring them to the top of mind throughout the year.
There's probably an app out there that is more efficient than notes, that like, hey, it sends you notifications. Hey, how are you doing on your goal? You
I'm sure there's like
haven't
40
seen me.
apps that are great for
Uh,
that to remind you and
yeah.
spur you on and check in and accountability and all these things.
Yeah. Yep.
Uh, there was I was looking up like things that you can do, like the role that goals play and how you can like things you can do that can be helpful for setting better goals. So, for instance, you can ride a really loud motorcycle by outside the office. You can do that. I don't know if you can hear that. This dude doing like,
Maybe that's his goal. He's watched your podcast before, and he's like, his goal is now to interrupt your podcasts.
there you go.
No, I could barely hear it. I could barely hear it.
All right. We'll carry on. So, so one, goals help provide clarity. So if you actually sit down, you write your goals down, it forces you to become more clear on what you're trying to achieve versus being generic. I want to buy a house. It's like, okay, that could be a lot of things. Do you want the house to be in Detroit and it costs $10,000? Do you want it to be a 2 bedroom house? Do you want a 5 bedroom house? Do you want like what do you mean by house? So you have to get more specific. Also, it can lead to more commitment. All right, I've written this down, and I guess I feel like it has a sense of ownership to it. I need to do this. Retention. There's this thing I saw. It's called the generation effect. So generation effect being whenever we write an idea down, you are more prone to take ownership of it. So even if you are maybe you're listening to someone else and you're taking notes and you're putting those notes into your own words. Like, ooh, you're reading a book and and you love the idea of a book, so you summarize it and you don't just quote it, you summarize it in your own words. That is you're generating your thoughts around an idea, and that provides ownership to it. And then finally, accountability. So just setting goals and writing down goals can lead to greater accountability to yourself, and if you share them with others, maybe with those other people as well.
Yeah, I had not seen that, but that makes sense. I mean, like the stat you mentioned earlier, 64% of goals that are shared with someone definitely speaks to that accountability. You're more likely to achieve 40%, 42% more likely to achieve a goal if it's written down. So that goes to like clarity, commitment, helping with memory retention, all those things. So it makes sense.
You have to remember, though, I think 63% of stats are made up on the spot. So
Yeah.
take the whole this with a grain of salt.
Okay.
Hey, this is something I think is incredibly important. So Stephen Covey, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. There's a part in there that talks about leaning your ladder up against the wrong wall. So he talks about use this illustration of essentially you lean the ladder up, you climb it, and you realize that, my goodness, I just climbed really high and far, and it's not even taking me to the right spot. And I have been in the position, unfortunately, fortunately, of a lot of conversations with people who are wildly successful financially, only to realize later in life that they were wildly successful, but their ladder was leaned against the wrong wall. What I mean by that, like I have had this conversation several times with people. It goes a lot like this. So we're sitting down, they're in my office, they're in their mid, late 60s, early 60s, somewhere in there, really financially well off. Their kids have grown and they're out of the house now. And I ask them, like, all right, we've talked through their money and stuff. And it's like, hey, you've done really well. What led you to wanting to be a surgeon? And it's like, oh, well, there's a story. I've heard this story tons. Oh, well, Jim, when I was a kid, we didn't have much money. And my parents, they would fight about money a lot. And me and my siblings, we didn't really have nice stuff. We had a very bland lunch and dinner every day. And we had old tattered clothes and we couldn't really go on trips. And, it was just describing that they didn't have much. So I decided when I was 12 years old that I want to make sure that I was able to make a good living and take good care of my family and make sure that my kids had a better childhood than I had. And like, I heard my parents fight about money all the time because they were always stressed about it. And I want to make sure that my spouse and I wouldn't one day fight about money because we would have plenty. It's like, wow, well, clearly you did that. I just saw your net worth and your income and you did it. You made a lot of money. You said that you wanted to do all that because you wanted to make sure that your kids had a great childhood and you had a really good marriage. So how was it? Your kids are grown out of the house. How was being a parent? How was your kid's childhood? And an unfortunate amount of time, they would sit back for a moment, and for the first time, it seemed that they thought on that question, and they realized, you know what? I'm not sure. I I know they had a lot of good stuff and we went on some cool trips, but now that I think about it, I worked a whole lot. So I think they had a good childhood, but I probably wasn't around as much I hoped that I was be. Okay, well, how are y'all? How's your marriage? Well, to be honest, I guess we also fought about money a lot. And yeah, we weren't fighting because we didn't have anything, but we definitely still fought about money a lot. So again, it's I think a lot of people have climbed really high and far and fast on this ladder of success, only to realize, my goodness, I was pursuing the wrong thing the whole time. And that's why we try to regularly go back to the theme, the values, to make sure that your goals are informed by those values, not just climbing something just arbitrarily. Sorry about the monologue there.
No, it's good. So where do you think the breakdown is? Like where did that person miss? Was it the value they were anchored into all along was the wrong value? Because it sounds like that person created set that goal based on a value of wanting to provide for my kids and my family in the best way possible. They took actions. They made the goal based off that value. They were taking actions that they thought would help to achieve that goal. They achieved the goal they thought, but in reality, they were anchored into the wrong value.
yeah, I don't think they ever stopped. They said, well, I wanted this because I want to make sure my kids had a good childhood. And I want to make sure that,
Hmm.
like, I heard my parents fight about money a lot, and I want to make sure we avoid that. Then they realized that, heck, they don't even know if their kids had a good childhood because they weren't present.
Yeah.
Like, I think
Yeah.
most parents and kids would argue that that's not a great childhood. If your parents aren't ever
Yeah.
around, maybe you have stuff thrown at you, but how many people would rather have their parents present on a regular basis than just have another toy? You know,
Yeah.
that will only get you so far. And I think a lot of people realize that later on, like, oh goodness, I'm not sure. Like, I
Yeah.
hope it was good.
Yeah, that's fair. I was just trying to think through where was the breakdown in not spending enough time understanding the value, or was the did the breakdown happen in the decision phase where I didn't truly weigh the trade-offs of the direction I was heading?
Yes. So that's where I think it's both. So you could
Yeah,
say that one thing's important to you, but in reality, if again, I say this a lot, but like show me, you might say something's important to you, but then I see your calendar and your checkbook, and it's like, hey, your primary resources would argue otherwise.
yeah,
And yeah, I think we see that a lot is this misalignment with when it comes to the decisions, and it's not reflecting what is ultimately what you're saying is important to you. And again, that's why we talked about in earlier conversations is, money's a top cause of divorce and personal dissatisfaction, things like that. It's because with this misalignment of what you're communicating with your words, what you're communicating with your time and money. And that's
yeah,
where we use that statement of financial purpose, not to manipulate, but as a reminder. Let's say someone says, hey, I really want to make sure I have plenty of time to spend with my family, but then they are taking an action that means that they're going to have to give up a lot of time with their family for a really long time. It's like, hey, well, I'm going to read this back to you. These are your words, what you said is important to you, and part of my job is an accountability for you there. Okay, if you do this, this is a decision you're making. Do we need to change what you said your financial purpose is, or do we need to change this action and go a different direction? So you're making a decision now. Again, I think a lot of people just make decisions without considering the implications of those decisions, or at least they take actions without considering it. And that, frankly, that's a large part of I think what our job is. People come to us saying, "Hey, Jim, should I buy that duplex? Should I sell my business? Should I retire now or wait 5 years?" And they're oftentimes considering one to maybe five, usually 1 to 3 variables with that decision. If I buy this duplex, how much is the down payment and what will be the annual income without considering these other implications? Or hey, if I retire in 5 more years versus in 1 more year, what's that mean from an income perspective or whatever? And a lot of our job, be it on the financial side of things, like, all right, for you retire, like, all right, insurance, income, allowing your assets to grow for longer, time with family, your health, all these things. But it's also non-financial. These, hey Jim, if we get a pool, if we get a house with a pool, what are all the impacts there? It's like, well, yeah, there's financial implications, but there's also family implications, and it's bringing all of these pieces to the table. That's where our job gets really interesting. Is I used to like working puzzles, and I'm not a huge puzzle fan anymore. But when I was a kid, I loved working puzzles. And obviously, when you work a puzzle, the first part is to get the box and you look at it and you set it up somewhere you can reference it regularly as you're building the thing. And then you
yeah,
get all the pieces out. You need all the pieces out. You can't build a puzzle when you're missing a bunch. So you get all the pieces out, you flip them all over so you can see them, and you start, at least me, you start sorting them by corner pieces, side pieces, and middle pieces. And then maybe you get more granular. It's like, all right, all the pieces with this pattern on it or this color on it, we're going to put here and there. Then you start building it out. And that's what makes our job fun is like a lot of our job is to help people actually stop and say, hey, what is the cover of this puzzle box? Understanding that your cover is going to change. Again, that's sort of where the goals come in. Like the cover is going to change over time. And then the IRS comes in and they change tax rules, so suddenly there's like, hey, we're going to take these puzzle pieces, we're going to actually put these pieces in. So suddenly we're like changing the whole puzzle around to make it more like to nuance it and stuff. So that's what makes our job exciting is one, the hey, what does this puzzle look like? What's the picture we're creating? Understanding that picture will change over time. It's gonna morph a little bit, and that's totally fine. And then, hey, as these new pieces get thrown in the mix, we need to stay on top of what the pieces are. But then, how does that impact? Okay, if suddenly it looked like we were working a puzzle that had this type of jigsaw type formation, but now has this other one, that's going to impact how it fits with the four pieces around it, but that could also impact how those pieces interact with the pieces around it, and the ripple effect of those decisions and the new pieces in their life.
Yeah, some people that probably sounds like a nightmare, but it's a lot of fun. It's a fun thing we get to do, and really neat, to be in that trusted role, to be uh, a part of helping people make those decisions and put those puzzle pieces together. It's no surprise you're not into puzzles as much anymore, Jim. With uh, four kids running around and boys wrestling, it'd be pretty tough to keep a puzzle together in your house, I would imagine.
A few years ago, Kendra and I thought we were going to get back into puzzles, so we bought one of those. It's you can do puzzles on it, and then you can close it up and transport them and like slide under your bed or whatever. We got one of those, and we never used it, but yeah, the puzzle, a puzzle for me is only motivating if I'm building something pretty so I can see it come about. So like if I had a puzzle, it was like this beautiful mountain background. It's like, oh, that'd be fun. Or maybe it's, I'm building out something that's more sentimental. That could be exciting, but I don't want to do a puzzle just for fun or something that's boring. I don't know. I've got other competing priorities. This is the trade-offs. Like, all right, if I have an hour and a half in the evening, do I want to read, do a puzzle, play a game, watch a movie, sleep, let my brain thaw out after work, and then wrestling kids? So it's decisions we make. Hey, I want to go back. This is really interesting. And I recognize this in my life and by observing other people. And then I heard a study on this a handful of years ago. I was like, that makes total sense. And it's going to sound like it's contradicting some of the stuff I mentioned earlier. And I think this is incredibly important. And I didn't share this with you before the podcast because again, I think it's cool. So there was a study. This guy, Peter Gollwitzer, he did in 2009, and the study was, his findings showed that you can have a premature sense of accomplishment just by sharing what your goals are. You can have this dopamine hit by telling people, I'm going to do this. And there's actually, to an extent, sharing your goals publicly can actually stunt your ability or the likelihood of you achieving that goal. Let's say your goal is to have $10 million and you go tell a bunch of people, I'm gonna have $10 million. There's an amount of dopamine that you receive just by telling that people, like, oh, I'm gonna do it. And then a lot of times you don't have follow through because you already got the satisfaction you wanted from sharing it. I don't know. Have you ever seen that? I see that a lot, actually.
Yeah, I don't have specific examples of it, but I have seen like people sharing something on social media, like, "Man, I'm starting this business or doing this thing," and then that's probably the last time you ever hear about it. It is interesting to think about that, though. I never would have made that connection of you getting the dopamine hit just from telling people about it. So you're
Nah,
kind of
dude.
already satisfied before going in.
You see it a
It's
lot.
weird.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
running a marathon. It feels good to tell people you're going to run a marathon, and whatever. I'm going to make statistics up, but like 15% of the dopamine hit you would receive from running the marathon, you get just by saying you're going to run a marathon. It's like,
Well,
I feel good now. I told five people I'm pretty awesome. I basically ran a marathon because told five people I'm running a marathon.
yeah. I wonder, I'm sure this study doesn't exist or maybe it does, but I wonder if that would be true for people whose goals are actually rooted in something they care about and is important to them. Like
So
is that the thing is that the missing piece? I would think yes.
I went further into that study because I heard that, I read it in the book or heard it on a podcast probably 10 years ago or so, and it stuck with me. And I personally am cognizant of that whenever I have goals. And it's neat. I never went back and referenced the study deeper. I've referenced it a few times when talking with people, but I've actually never read the study. So I went and did more digging on the study and further findings on it, and I guess the nuances surrounding it. So one, this usually has to do with public announcements of goals, and those goals that are impacted are usually related to identity. So I'm going to run a marathon. It's suddenly like, oh, I'm the type of person who runs marathons. And suddenly you identify as that. oh, I'm going to go run a marathon. And people are like, oh man, that guy must be in shape. And suddenly you receive the validation that you need as being someone who is a marathon runner. You're in shape. You feel validated in that moment. You receive the dopamine hit by stating X goal. Therefore, it's part of your identity. And you're already working into that identity just by stating it. And that itself that's a large attractor of actually achieving the goal. You feel like you've already sort of done it
Okay.
in a sense.
Yeah.
Now, there's a few things you can do to offset that risk. One, limit early sharing of the goals until you've had some level of progress. And these are things I have recognized this with myself. So, for instance, I I always wanted to be someone who reads a lot, and I think we call it identity. We can say like, oh, that guy's a reader. I always wanted to be a big reader, but I never read many books until probably 7 years ago. I settled in myself that it was after I finished studying a bunch like CFP and all that junk, whatever this was. Once I got through that, I was like, man, I have a lot of time on my hands again. I've always wanted to be someone who reads a lot. I want to read a lot of books. So I settled myself. I'm going to read a lot of books this coming year. So I set myself that goal. Then I shared it with one friend. It's like, man, we were talking about reading. And he said, yeah, I've always wanted to read a lot of books too. So we didn't tell anyone. We said, hey, let's have a contest. Who can read the most books? And then we just did it. So we could say that's part of identity as being a reader. But I had already settled in myself that I wanted to read, and I'd already started a few books and I got momentum. And so it was something I was taking ownership of rather than just like getting that dopamine hit just by sharing that goal. But then also that goes into like what else can you do? So limit early sharing until you've had progress versus just feeling good about stating it because you don't have actions. You should dopamine's not bad necessarily. It's you should get that hit from actually doing the thing, not just talking about doing that thing. Also, having an accountability partner or a coach. So not just sharing it generally publicly on social media or just telling people at a party like, hey, I think I might run a marathon. It's like no, having specific person or people you share these things with. We call it accountability partner or a coach. It said that you're 64% more likely to achieve that goal if you have or to follow through if you have accountability partners or a coach rather than just someone. You're 64 more percent more likely if you have someone who will push you to follow through and accountability versus someone who just gives you praise. Sorry, all right, Cade, I'm going to run a marathon and I feel good about it. And you're like, wow, Jim, you're the best. I wish I was like you. Whatever things people say a lot. We get it. Versus like, hey, Cade, I'm going to run a marathon and you hold me to it. Hey, Jim, did you run? How many times did you run? How many days did you run this week? What's your mileage looking like? What's your time? What's your stamina? These things. And you're actually holding me accountable to it. That accountability can, again, according to old Peter Goldwitzer, having that type of relationship and that type of sharing leads to 64%, according to him, accomplishment. So sharing it can be good, but has to be, again, limited sharing for an intent beyond praise. And you still, and then like maybe limit it or at least limit it until you've done something associated with that goal. Like, man, maybe you should get up and just go run for a handful of mornings on your own. Get up before the sunrise. Don't tell anyone you're doing it. And then like, hey man, I think we're going to do this. Can you help me? And you can hold
Yeah.
me accountable to it. But I have some sense of ownership versus just like, I have ownership and it's like, it's feeling good because I'm doing this versus I feel good because I've telling people I'm doing this and you're going to help me through it. So now I have this, man, I'm doing it, this ownership, and I have someone who's keeping me accountable. Like, I don't care about, I'm not doing this for other people's praise. And then lastly, you alluded to this a long time ago, was like, especially for long-term goals, is setting these milestones. And that was another thing they mentioned, was setting small and frequent progress, like milestones, as versus
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm going to run a marathon in 9 months. It's like, okay, did you get up? Did you run today? There's I think it was like Couch to 5K. I remember hearing about that a few years ago and how that works. I think their program is to help people who like don't run at all and don't really exercise very much, and helping them to where they can go run a 5K in whatever certain amount, like at a certain time and not that long. And instead of starting off with like, all right, go run 5K or a 5K, or even go run a mile. The day one, I believe, is get up and go get your tennis shoes. Day two, get up, go put your tennis shoes on and go step outside. Day three, put your tennis shoes on, go outside and run down the street. and you're done. That's it. Day 4,
Yeah.
run around the block. So you're building up these steps, and it's small and frequent progress. So you get these small wins, and slowly you become someone who runs. You're someone who gets up in the morning. You take action. You're not someone who's like, it's not aspirations, and it's not someone who just sat on the couch and all of a sudden go out and like they want to. They tell people, you know what, I'm running a marathon, and in their head they're running the marathon. Versus like, I want to be that guy, and they see themselves like, like a marathon runner type in good health and all that, and they get that hit, and that's what they're picturing. Versus like, dude, how am I gonna do this? I've never got off the couch. Like, okay, let's get
Yeah.
these small wins. I think that's incredible.
It is, yeah. Well, there's a lot of psychology behind that, having small wins. Just in the first thing that popped in my mind when you started talking about small wins was like snowball debt payment is tackling the debt with the not focusing on the interest rate, but tackling the debt with the smallest balance first so that you start having small wins, that you're more likely to stick with that plan or that goal to be debt free. So that's really important. It's also interesting to hear from that study the importance of having a specific accountability partner, because when I was listening, and I might be alone in this thinking, but I would think that the public announcement of, hey, I'm going to chase this goal, that's kind of like public accountability. Like that's why you don't keep it to yourself. But really, if you think about
That's
it,
the
if I
opposite.
yeah, yeah. But if you think about it, and if I make some post about my goal that I'm going to try to accomplish in the next year, no one's actually going to hold me accountable for it.
Nah,
People are going to
dude, we
read
all
it.
assume you did it. Like, wow, Cade is
it
amazing. He did it. Cade swam the
exactly.
Atlantic Ocean because he said he was. All right. Well, my buddy Cade
Yeah,
swam the Atlantic Ocean once.
yeah. It's really interesting to stop and think about that. I've never considered that before.
Yeah. When I heard that, I became very aware of like when, how, who, all these things. Am I sharing it? How am I keeping myself
Hmm.
accountable? And I have noticed that. It's like, hey, I'm gonna do this. I notice usually I don't do that if I've shared it too much. Because I realize like, oh my
Yeah,
goodness, it felt good to say that. I'm gonna do an ultra marathon. It's like I am
yeah.
an ultra marathon runner. You're right. How do you even need to go run one? I basically am one already.
Yeah, I've told 10 people and they all said that's really cool. So that's all I
Yeah.
needed out of this.
Yeah, and the people I told were like, they didn't say there's no way you can run it. They're like, yeah, okay, cool. Like they can see it. I basically, yeah. uh, I guess lastly, as we wrap things up, would be talking through like, so Kendra and I, when we set goals, like, okay, what should you set goals around? Again, there's probably way better things on this, and we should probably have a conversation again once like we're more well read on like specifics. But like how we set
Mhm.
goals, like Kendra and I, we sit down. It's like, all right, what are areas in our life that are important to us, and what are goals associated with those areas that we should have? So like personal, so be it spiritual, physical, mental, those, yeah. Relational. So Kendra and I, a relationship with kids, family, friends. So then we start, and then for me, business. So those are the areas I look at setting goals. So if it's personal, physical, okay, I want to. And each year I set different goals. Like, all right, I want to make sure I go to the gym at least 4 days a week. By December 31st, I want to squat X, bench Y, and also have a resting heart rate of Z. And for whatever academically, I want to read 60 books this year. I want to read the Bible and pray 7 days a week and finish and read X amount of books in the Bible per year. Relationally with Kendra, I want to make sure we go on X amount of dates on this frequency with our kids. I want to make sure that I spend this time with these kids and I treat them this way, and we have these types of conversations with family, with business, with friends. So that's how we break them out. I don't know if you and Bethany have a particular way of going about, or it's like, hey, I want to run. I want to run a marathon.
Yeah, we really want to bake a cake and run a marathon. That's it.
That's carb
No,
loading,
I would
dude. Just
say
eat the cake and then run the marathon, and I think you'll be a an unstoppable force.
yeah. But I've just shared with you those goals, so I feel great about them already. So I'm
Yeah,
good.
who needs cake or marathon? Next goal.
No, I was thinking through listening to you describe all of that. It you know you you started by listing things that you value, and then every goal you mentioned was, again, going back to smart goals. They were all specific, measurable, attainable, results based, and there was some kind of a time associated with them. So I think y'all, it sounds like y'all have it down.
I am pretty smart. People call me a wise guy pretty often, or they'll say things like, "Man, you're a good job, Einstein." So I get a lot of
I
compliments in my
think
life.
that's just because you post on social media all the time how smart you are. So you
Yeah,
just
got my smart goals. Nah. Well, I guess as we close out, do you have any closing thoughts, summary, or like, man, I would. That's the thing I think you should remember. Something that stuck with you today.
I would say to just stop and think about how you're if you're setting goals, start setting goals. If you are setting goals, stop to think more strategically about how you've set those goals, and what you're going to do differently about trying to achieve those goals based off of whatever thing resonated with you, the listener, during this conversation.
Yeah, I'd say mine would be again the we harp on this all the time just because I've seen so much regret, and that is like consider further beyond that goal. Why is that a goal? Anchor into themes, values, allow that to then inform goals. And it's okay if your goals are going to change. Again, your goals today are probably vastly different than they were 10 years ago. That's totally fine. Just again, the purpose of a goal, as far as I'm concerned, is to inform the best next step. Okay. So just consider, right, what direction we need to head. Now that I have clarity, let's start taking steps, taking action, understanding the implications of that. Cade, what is your random question for the day?
My random question for the day: What is your what's your go-to travel snack? Whether it's a road trip or what do you buy right before you get on the plane?
Oh, man. I don't know. I think my travel snacks are now like whatever Kinder packs for the kids, and I just eat what they decide they don't want to eat. It's like, wow, I thought the kids loved cheese sticks or jerky, and I guess they decide they're not going to eat that today. So I guess today I will love jerky and cheese sticks. So I just eat whatever the kids eat. I started laughing when you
That's
asked that
so
because
true.
when I was a kid, it was Twizzlers. Now I haven't eaten a Twizzler in a while. Kinder would kill me if she caught me eating Twizzlers. But when I was in sixth grade, on the way to camp, I ate 2 pounds of Twizzlers on the bus ride, and I got really, oh gosh, I got so sick
Two
that night.
pounds?
Yeah, there was a so then
Oh.
later that night there was 2 pounds of throw up at the threshold of the girls' bunk room from me. Yeah. Good times.
I wonder how many people still talk about that and they don't remember your name, but they're like, "Remember that guy that
That
puked up
moron. I wonder
2
if he's in
pounds of"
jail or still alive. Yeah. Whatever that guy. If he's making some bad decisions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's funny.
yep. Cade, what about you? What's your go-to snack?
Ooh, it's funny that you said that about the kids because it's kinda the same. We travel with in Jameson's diaper bag, there's a handful of snacks in there, and it's I get the leftovers. But if I had to choose something, I would say a Chomps, specifically, a Chomps beef stick, some peanut M&Ms, and a Sprite.
Okay, okay. It's pretty good. We eat a lot of chomps
Yeah,
in our house. And the kids, like a week ago, decide that all of a sudden they don't like chomps. And they never have liked chomps. So I've been eating a lot of chomps.
Chomps are so good.
Hey, here's mine's for you. So, what's your favorite cut of steak?
Oh, man. I'm not super well versed in cuts of steak. Growing up, I was served well done sirloins a lot. So that's what I grew up
It's tough.
on, and I was always given a hard time about it. And probably, I don't know, 5 years ago, I ventured into more less ruined cuts of meat. and cooked cuts of meat. I would say like a maybe a New York strip that's medium, somewhere between medium and medium well. But I enjoy now, and I appreciate the a marbled steak for that flavor, the juiciness. But I like if there's a and maybe it's not a New York strip. Again, I'm not well versed in this, but if it has a section of fat along the edge that I can char and char
You're
the
thinking
fatty
probably more of
piece,
a ribeye. A strip's usually relatively
maybe.
lean around the sides. I think you're probably thinking of a ribeye.
Okay, well, both. I like both, but if I'm sometimes I'm craving that like charred fatty, and then so yes, rib I'd go for. If I'm not
Charred
craving that,
fatty.
I'd
That's what they
eat
called me in middle school.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
eating all those Twizzlers. Yeah.
I like. I'm pretty
Cool.
boring. I think chefs don't appreciate this. They like a tougher one. Like I like a fillet. I like there's other cuts I eat a lot. So like ribeye. I like New York strips, porterhouses. A really good go to that's inexpensive but tasty is oh goodness. Um, it's the Brazilian cut. Slipping my mind right now. Oh well, we eat it a lot. It's inexpensive, relatively, and it's as tender as a fillet. You looking it up right
Not
now?
not pecana, or
Yeah,
is it
yeah,
pecana?
picanha. So we eat that
Okay,
quite a bit.
picanha.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
that's a good. It costs I don't know, a third of what a fillet is going to cost, and it's real tender. So you can get that for relatively inexpensive. That's usually like a lot of Brazilian. If you go to Brazilian steakhouse, that's usually picanha. They're slicing off for you. But yeah, I would say fillet. You know, a lot of people like ribeyes and stuff. I like leaner meat, but tender. So
I I will say if I'm picking it out on my own, it would be New York strip or ribeye because I can find the one that's a little marbly or the New York or the piece that has a little bit of fat on the edge. But if I'm going out to eat and I'm getting a nice steak somewhere, it would be a fillet too because I also like I don't want it to be if it's too fatty, I'm over it.
yeah, man. Thanks for
Picanha
hanging
though, I've
out
never
today.
even heard of that.
Picanha,
Yeah, it
give it a
was
look.
fun. Will
All
do.
right. Well,
Thanks,
Cade,
Jim.
thanks for hanging out. I think it was a good conversation. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
See ya.
See ya.